Hello, and welcome back to session 3 of Together Facing the Challenge. I hope that you guys have been enjoying the trainings and things so far. Um, I hope that you are gaining some new things to utilize. I know that last session we talked about the setting of expectations, um, and so Session 3, we are going to do the use of effective parenting tools to enhance cooperation. So, recognizing the role that adults play in power struggles is key to coaching them on how to prevent and escape from one, as well as providing strategies for repairing the relationship once a power struggle has taken place. So, that's what we get to do today is we get to talk about power struggles because they are so easy to get involved in one. They're so easy to get wrapped up and lured into one. And sometimes that's hard to exit one. So being able to recognize that you are in one is half the battle. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, just as a little quick reminder of session 2, we talked about the power of praise and the power of incentives. And we looked in our parent manual and talked about, different incentives that, you could use or maybe you are using. We talked about daily check-ins and how to do those and how to conduct those and how to be effective when doing the daily check-ins. We talked about how to give effective instructions and how to word those so that they would be, beneficial. And then we talked about how to formulate and tweak maybe some of the house rules that you have in place and why they're important and how they kind of set an expectation for the kiddos that come into your home. And so um, having expectations like that are a good way to make a child feel safe. So, um, session 3, like I said, we're talking about power struggles. So we get to learn and recognize our involvement, try to prevent participate from participating in the power struggles, learn strategies to improve emotional awareness, learn strategies to diffuse a power struggle that's already happening, and understand how increased empathy to a youth's trauma can help avoid power struggles. So difficult child behavior can actually wear down even the most skilled and caring foster parents. For this reason, avoiding power struggles is important. So when parents don't engage in those power struggles, they're actually teaching children that they're not going to focus on the negative stuff on his or her terms. So, but as we all know, staying out of power struggles is easier said than done. We've probably all engaged in power struggles with our children, or maybe even our spouses or significant others or friends. It often happens so quickly that we find ourselves reacting to the situation and later wonder how we even got there and, why we even let it go on. Kids seem to have this way of pushing our buttons and getting us to argue with them. So, in many youth in foster care, with histories of trauma have learned to manage their lives using power struggles by focusing on building collaboration in your relationship with youth, increasing predictability and decreasing conflict. You can provide a more trauma informed treatment to youth. So, today we're going to be focusing on strategies that you can use to assist you when you are confronted with a potential power struggle. So we're going to watch this clip real quick about what is a power struggle. And while you're watching this, I want you to kind of be thinking of what did the parent do well in this situation? What things could have been done differently? Just kind of analyze the video and use that notepad and that pencil or paper or pen that you have um, that you've been taking notes on and using for our discussions when we meet. I want you to just kind of analyze the video so that way we can kind of talk about it when we meet next. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get this started. Maybe.
I need you to watch this gap while I check the passenger out. Okay. Why don't you go stand in front of your vehicle for me?
James?
Oh, I need to step out far, please. Stop. Put your hands behind your head and then raise your fingers.
James! James.
What?
In 5 minutes, I want you to turn off the TV and go clean up your room.
Yeah.
Get him that hit!
5 minutes.
Drop it!
James, your 5 minutes is up.
Uh-huh.
Now, please go in and clean up your room.
What did you do that for?
I told you that you had 5 more minutes and then it would be time to clean up. 5 minutes is up.
I was watching my show.
Well, now it's time to clean. Now here's your checklist as a reminder. Now get going. If you have any questions, you come back and find me to ask.
Okay.
I'll come and check on you in a minute. How's it going in here? James?
Huh?
James! I thought I asked you to clean up in here. James, I told you to start cleaning up your room right now.
I'm finishing my comic book first.
I don't give a damn about your comic book. You get off your lazy butt and start cleaning up this mess.
No!
You better start cleaning up right now.
It's my room and I can keep it like I want.
What? James, stop it. Quit that. You quit doing that right now.
That video kind of is a good depiction of how easily our buttons can become pushed, especially as parents, and how quickly it can escalate into an argument that ends up being full of yelling and throwing things, and so it just can quickly get out of hand. And so it's very important how to recognize when it's getting to that point. So what do you think the parent did well in this video? What could she have done differently? And where did things kind of start to break down? And when exactly did she completely lose control of the situation? So based on just the little bit that we've talked so far about power struggles, what do you how would you word like how would you make a definition for a power struggle, I guess? And so I want you to write that down, and then we can revisit that when we meet together. So conflicts are often triggered by minor incidents. So 4 key points here. Many conflicts begin with small behaviors, right? Being off task, failing to follow instructions and directions promptly, fairness issues. Adults rarely initiate the conflict, but they often unintentionally respond in a way that feeds that fire. During times of conflict, adults often don't use the skills that would serve them best. Just like the kids, they don't act, they react. We kind of lose control of our processing. And sometimes we call these buttons, since people can push them, and that immediately just kind of sets us off. So button pushing. There are many button pushing methods that kids use that can result in parents reacting in some sort of negative manner. So this is an activity, but really you can turn to page 29 in your foster parent manual. And I want you to take a few moments. You can pause this video, and I want you to fill that page out. Being able to identify and understand your hot spots or your button pushers or your buttons is key to maintaining control of your emotions. So whether it's done intentionally or by accident, sometimes the youth escalate a power struggle when they push our buttons, and sometimes they know what those buttons are, sometimes they don't, and sometimes we don't even know what our buttons are in the moment. So it's just good to be self-aware. So this is just a self-awareness exercise, but it will be something that you'll turn in to your licensing worker as homework for this session, or some of this session anyway. So we're going to write those down, and then I want to discuss those with you when we meet together. If you're willing to share what some of yours are, or you could even just write down some that could be a button pusher for most people. You know, some things like just some examples that they give us. I don't know. Yeah, here we go. Common buttons that youth push. Things when they are yelling and they're upset with you and they say, "You don't love me. You never let me do anything. I hate you. You're a liar." So this is just kind of a common buttons youth push list that tend to kind of set parents or adults off a little bit. So I want you to come up with some of your buttons that may not be on this list, or maybe some buttons that, you know, are from other people that they may experience but are also not on this list. So button pushing is really a coping strategy, really, for many youth that have trauma histories. That they have developed in order to keep others at a safe distance. So kind of like we talked about earlier in previous sessions, that the idea of these kids having this invisible suitcase, and it's in an effort to keep you at that safe distance from getting too close. They find these buttons to push that will hopefully kind of send you spiraling or send you further away. So I want you to take some time and write down on, like I said, on page 29 of your foster parent manual. You can pause this video and just write down some of your buttons. But continuing on, so not only do we need to be aware of adolescent button pushing, parents need to be aware of the buttons that we push as well. So just like kids, we sometimes will say things or do things that cause kids to react as well, right? So things like preaching or using cliches. So things when we say, well, when I was your age, I never blah, 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 insert whatever statement, or talking in chapters, meaning like just using a bunch of words, right? I've told you for weeks and weeks that you need to take out the garbage. How many times do we have to go through this? We're always doing this. We're always going around in circles, blah, 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 right? Another thing is labelizing. We like to do this. We like to say things like, you never clean your room. You're always arguing. You're always doing this. You're always talking on the phone. You're always playing your video games. Futurizing. We like to tell them what their future is going to look like. You'll never get a job with that attitude. You'll never get a date if you don't clean up your room when you're all messy and you don't wash your hair or clean yourself. Like we love to do that sometimes. So we want to try to avoid that because that is a button pusher. That is a button for a lot of youth. Questioning a teenager's restlessness and discontent. We tend to just ask questions like, what's gotten into you? Just being, very questioning and just not really asking politely or, asking in a delicate way. Not tolerating any experimental behavior. Learn to tolerate certain behaviors, like changes in their clothing and their hairstyle. Adolescence and this age group is really where they're trying to find their identity, right? So it's kind of to be expected that they are going to experiment with maybe their looks or the things in their interests. Obviously, we want to make sure that they are not experimenting with things that are dangerous, obviously, but things like, identity are kind of to be expected. So just being more tolerable and accepting and loving of that. And then collecting criticism, rehashing past behaviors and problems, and then, giving insults. So, bringing up past issues and not letting that die or be lived down. That can be a button pusher for many of our youth that we serve. So being aware of your vulnerabilities is a great place to start on all of this. So understanding how power struggles or conflicts begin, how they escalate, can and continue on actually helps us explain why adults often mirror kids, or how we often mirror their behaviors anyway, um, especially in times of conflict. So it also explains a lot why adults are the only ones who can cause the conflict to end. Although adults rarely initiate that conflict, they will unintentionally 9 times out of 10 feed into it. So during times of conflict, parents don't really use those skills. We mentioned that we don't really use the skills that would serve us best in those situations. So when we as parents are dealing with conflict or like a situation, we often rely on our personal authority. Unfortunately, the very tools that are effective with most children often don't work with youth because they're more likely to react than act in times of stress. So we want to remember that a lot of youth have experienced trauma. They've developed these irrational thoughts about themselves that they're carrying in that invisible suitcase. And they have these preconceived and most often false ideas of the world around them and themselves. So to support them in healing of this, it's important to allow for self-expression without reacting in a way that ignites or supports, those irrational thoughts. So going from a power struggle to trauma. we do engage in power struggles regularly, or we can engage in power struggles regularly. They may be silly things that don't seem silly at the time. These things, like things that could have just been left alone, but instead we chose that battle to fight, or serious issue power struggles. Engaging in those power struggles regularly can, eventually lead to a child experiencing trauma. Um, Power struggles can be overcome. Um, we're going to look at techniques later on how to escape, how to avoid them, and recover from them. But then, like I mentioned, power struggles can lead to trauma, especially when they happen repeatedly, and especially when they're recreated trauma, and when they are left unaddressed, when there's not that communication happening afterwards, after the argument, after the blow up. It can lead to trauma. So this activity we will probably not, we won't watch it here, but I will either send it to you in a link for you to watch before our next meeting, which that's probably what I will do. It's like a 15-minute clip, but it is very powerful. And it just kind of shows the link between trauma, that invisible suitcase, and those power struggles. And it will show how unaddressed trauma and poorly handled power struggles combine to disrupt the treatment. So it is like I said, it is a pretty powerful little clip that just kind of explains it, what a child might experience, especially when they're being removed from their home. So I will send this link to you along with this video or this session. And I would like for you to watch it as well, and we can discuss it when we meet next. So we're not going to play it here, but just be prepared to talk about this particular video. It's on your foster parent manual on page 37. You can write your responses. We're going to probably just discuss this in person. And just come prepared to have that discussion on this video. So we're going to go ahead and just move on to the conflict cycle. So on page 30 of your foster parent manual, you will see the conflict cycle, and we'll talk about that here in just a second, about a little bit more in detail. So this diagram that you're looking at illustrates what frequently occurs in a conflict situation when you're dealing with kids in care. As we previously mentioned, due to past experiences that often include some form of neglect, trauma, or abuse, kids in care are a lot more likely to react quickly in stressful situations. So these past experiences directly impact their ability to effectively manage many of the daily stressors that confront them, while also causing an increase in those irrational beliefs. So in addition, many of the conflict situations start out small, but they do escalate very quickly. So the key is how and when to intervene. So this cycle is a model that explains why normal, reasonable parents sometimes behave in ways that are different from their personalities. So in times of conflict, foster parents often mirror those kids' behaviors. So remember, as parents, we are the only ones who can end the conflict. So as you can see here in the conflict cycle, a stressful event occurs. This event will quickly activate those irrational beliefs in that invisible suitcase. These irrational beliefs that have been activated will now trigger negative feelings. These negative feelings drive the behavior, and then the child has a behavior that causes a parent to react. This parent reaction is fed by the child's affect and mirrors the child's behavior and or emotion. The parent reaction restarts this conflict style, and then the child's irrational beliefs are then reinforced, and it just continues to be this this vicious cycle. So kind of walking through what a conflict cycle could look like, just as an example. So we see that Mario is sitting down and he's watching TV, and then stressful event is his mother comes into the room and tells Mario, hey, it's 4 p.m. It's time to turn off the television, start your homework. So this activates those irrational beliefs that Mario has in his invisible suitcase, which is that his foster mom does not treat him like her own children, and she's always picking on me. She doesn't like me. So that is an inaccurate, unhelpful, irrational belief that he is keeping in his suitcase. And then this will then trigger that a negative feeling. He starts to get angry, right? Because he feels like he is being mistreated. And then we see the behavior come out. So the negative behavior, he yells at his foster mom, and he tells her that he's not going to do his homework and that she cannot make him. So then we see the parent response, and the parent then mirrors that behavior, and Mario's foster mother raises her voice right back and tells him that he is certainly going to do his homework and that he'd better stop having such a bad attitude about it. It's that attitude of yours that continues to get you in trouble. And then we see the cycle repeat because those irrational beliefs are reinforced. Mario replies, you think I have an attitude? Well, you're the one with the attitude, lady, right? So that is kind of an idea about how the conflict cycle continues to be a vicious cycle. So recognizing and thinking about and dealing with your feelings. So as we see in the conflict cycle, thoughts and behaviors are actually really closely connected. Sorry, thoughts and feelings are actually really closely connected with behavior. The thoughts that we have about a situation impact the way we feel about the situation. And this interaction between thoughts and feelings informs the way we respond to the situation. Identifying your thoughts and feelings is a useful strategy that can help you to recognize when you are reacting in a particular situation or event. So this knowledge can be used to gain more control over your thoughts, feelings, and thereby your behaviors. Those who've experienced trauma can have a limited understanding of emotions, how feelings, thoughts, and behaviors are connected, and how to cope with the wide range of feelings that they experience. So next up, we're going to kind of delve into and discuss a little bit more a number of teaching points to help increase awareness of how to actually recognize, express, and cope with feelings. So recognizing your feelings. Caretakers can use their body to check in on how they're feeling and can determine how their body feels when they're having a positive versus negative emotion. So we can check in with our body and see that we have like a racing heart or a queasy stomach or sweaty palms or sweaty forehead, whatever. These cues can alert them to obviously what we're feeling or thinking. So recognition of others' feelings. At times, adults have difficulty knowing and interpreting what the youth are feeling or what they're thinking. They often make guesses without actually checking them out. Their guesses or interpretations can be incorrect and result in inappropriate responses. So it's helpful to ask the youth in how they're feeling and follow up with their concerns. Don't ever just make assumptions. Just talk to them, ask them. Identifying triggers. So a trigger is something around us that causes us to have emotions, that causes us to have thoughts. Knowing our triggers can help us prepare for or at least explain emotional changes. So as we did in the previous button pushing activity, it's important to continue to increase our awareness of our triggers and the effect that they have on feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. So it's also vital to increase our understanding of our youth's triggers. People who have known your youth longer, like a social worker, often they know their triggers. So it may be a good idea to start with them, ask them, and then look for patterns in the antecedent to those behaviors. And that social learning theory, the ABC, look for patterns in the antecedent. So once you know them, help your youth become aware of their triggers as well. That can definitely be helpful. So coping with feelings. Teaching ourselves and our youth how to gain control over feelings is key to success. It's very important to help them distinguish various levels of emotion and the physiological responses that accompany them. An image of a thermometer is one way to help demonstrate the different levels of emotion that one might experience. So as your temperature rises, the intensity of your feelings, right, they magnify as well. As one might anticipate, it tends to be easier to cope with feelings at the lower end of the thermometer. So as foster parents continue to develop strategies for coping with feelings, it's vital for them to regularly talk with their youth about ways to deal with their feelings and coping strategies that they can use as well. Normalizing feelings as much as possible. Model and talk with your youth that it's normal to experience a wide range of emotions, and that we all have different thoughts and reactions to different situations. Foster parents are their primary model and can be a powerful force in teaching appropriate expressions of a range of emotions. So monitoring emotions, it's important to explain that feelings can change. And one way to help us and our kiddos become more aware of these changes and the reality that they have both positive and negative feelings daily is to monitor their feelings at different times. So create a simple log, utilize a feelings chart, which is in your manual. All of those things can be beneficial in monitoring kiddos' emotions. So All right. Go ahead and move on. Oh, no, I went too fast. I'm sorry. All right, so how can we help caregivers manage internal signals and cues? And so, when adults and youth have difficulty um, regulating their emotions, they're more likely to kind of react in an impulsive way. And by doing so, they will often make poor choices. One way of helping them manage their feelings is by teaching and using relaxation techniques that help regulate emotional um, self control. Foster parents have the opportunity to model these techniques every single day um, by just simply showing how we deal and cope with the difficult situations in our lives. Um, it could be something as simple as, man, my boss really frustrated me today, asking me way too many things, putting too much stress, um, just load me up with work. I just feel so stressed out. Um, I think I'm going to go and take care of myself and go for a walk. I think that'll make me feel better. Do you want to come? Doing this clearly states your emotional state and the positive choice that you're making to cope with that stress. Um, so here's some examples that a parent could learn and teach the youth is the 5-5-5 breathing exercise, which is um, breathing in through your nose for a count of 5, hold it for 5, and then breathing out for another count of 5. Um, that is one way of kind of dealing with stress. Um, meditate is another helpful way, and prayer, helpful way of dealing with your stressors and coping, a positive coping skill, playing a sport, drawing, listening to music, playing music, just talking to someone that they trust, somebody that's a confidant or an accountability partner, um, reading, and even going for a walk, and just exercise in general, moving your body is a good way to relieve stressors. Mhm. So, one of the most challenging aspects of a foster parent's role is trying to avoid getting into power struggles with kids. Um, unlike other kids, youth often don't get enough positive attention. They learned that one surefire method for increasing the likelihood of receiving attention at all was misbehaving. So, although negative in nature, they learned that the way to get attention was by causing problems. Um, it's very important to understand that the underlying issues and needs that many youth bring with them into care, and the significant challenges that foster parents um, face as they confront these learned negative behaviors. Through repetitive modeling, coaching, and teaching, foster parents can help youth in care unlearn these behaviors and simultaneously replace them with more appropriate pro-social skills to better meet that need for attention. So the first step um, of getting out of a power struggle is recognizing when you are in one. Make sure I'm on. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Um, is to recognize when you're in one. As we discussed a little bit earlier, most of these power struggles result as a part of the conflict cycle. So a power struggle occurs after a stressful event for the child, and it generally happens because his feelings are keeping him from moving forward toward a real goal, right? He becomes focused on proving that he's right, which really is impossible, to do, since his behaviors are driven by beliefs that aren't accurate, that aren't right in the first place. And they're focused on that rather than being focused on getting what he actually wants. So if we're not careful, we will likewise become focused on winning an argument rather than getting the thing that we want. So no matter how hard we focus and how hard we try to actually avoid power struggles, there will still be times that we find ourselves being pulled into one, right into the middle of one. And so we can explore what we can do to prevent and escape those power struggles. So first of all, we're going to reflect on personal experience of a power struggle. And we're going to do this within the context of that ABC model. As you remember, I'm sure that we initially used the ABC model as a framework for a child's behavior when we were tracking the child's behavior. Here we're going to use the ABC model to explore adult behavior, our behavior, during a power struggle. So I want you to think of a power struggle that you have experienced in the past that did not go as well as you'd wanted it to. It could be with a youth, your child. It could be with your spouse, a friend. And then I want you to use the ABC structure to describe what happened. So the antecedent section should list things that started the power struggle, and the behavior should list what you did during the power struggle and maintained it. And then finally put the consequence section, put in the consequence section the feelings and the actions and other consequences that, resulted. So we're gonna discuss this. This isn't anything that you'll turn in, but on your notebook or your paper that you're taking notes on, write this down and come prepared to talk about it. But I want you to think of a power struggle that you've been involved in. So I'll give you a little bit of an example of one. So the antecedent could say, one of my children refused to do a small task, right? And I became frustrated when I asked him about it again. My button got pushed because he couldn't just do what he was supposed to do. And it really wasn't much to ask. So that's the antecedent, asked one of my kiddos to do something and they just flat out refused. So the behavior would be, I repeated my instruction, and when he continued to be non-compliant, I said, fine, in a louder voice, louder than I had meant for it to be. And I don't understand why you just never do what you're supposed to do. So I yelled all of those things. And the consequence was my child became angry with me and he threw his toys against the wall. So that's kind of an example of what a power struggle or documenting the power struggle would look like. So, like I said, write this down in your notes and come prepared to talk about that because I'm interested to hear some things and how you have responded. I think we can learn a thing or two from each other. So pause this if you need to, but we will discuss it when we meet. So I am going to go ahead and move forward. Okay. So how do we prevent and escape power struggles? So we are going to review a list of effective parenting tools to prevent power struggles from taking place. Sometimes parents have a difficult time with some of these techniques, like just walking away from conflict. When it's done properly, it can be very powerful and an effective intervention. Some parents feel the need that they need to get the last word during conflict and initially may feel the youth has gotten away with something when this strategy is suggested. On the contrary, avoiding a power struggle is reinforcing principles of trauma-informed practice. We are increasing safety and a sense of control. We are enhancing trustworthiness and transparency, and we're increasing just an opportunity for collaboration. So on pages 34 and 35 of your foster parent manual, it is entitled Power Struggles. And you can follow along there if you would like. So say or do nothing. Sometimes one of the most effective strategies to use is to say and do nothing. Intervening directly is not always the best solution. Walk away. Another strategy really is just to walk away from the situation. Don't be an audience for your child. Your attention and your presence can actually be a powerful reinforcement. So walking away is effective if done properly. Take 5. Remember that consequences can happen later, right? Sometimes it's helpful to just take a breather, take 5 to regain your composure before addressing the situation, to kind of get our head right. The use of natural and logical consequences. The use of natural or logical consequences may actually negate the power struggle. Sometimes the best course of action is no action at all. Using a consequence directly related to, we are not using that consequence, related to the behavior. So natural and logical consequences will be discussed in more detail in the next section, actually. So in addition to the strategies that we just talked about here, the following parental skills help us to reinforce the importance of our role as a foster parent, as both a model and a teacher to our kiddos. So pre-teaching is yet another effective parenting tool. So what is it and how does it work? Pre-teaching is exactly what it looks like. So before something happens, directly teach the youth what will happen and how they should behave. So although it can be used in many situations, it can be particularly helpful when a parent can anticipate a potential or likely problem and catch it before it happens. The other beneficial time for pre-teaching is when an activity or experience is new for the child. For example, maybe it's the first time they've ever gone to the bank. And he or she may not necessarily be aware of what appropriate behaviors are in those settings. So an example, your child asks if you'll take her to the mall. On past outings to the mall, she frequently bugged you to buy her lots of things. When you tell her no, she became upset and uncooperative. Um, so what are some things that you could do? So there are some steps to pre-teaching. And they are being proactive. They are setting clear expectations, set clear consequences for noncompliance, and following through with what you say. So if you had a kiddo, if this was your kiddo, and um, she asked you to take her to the mall, but you know how she's acted in the past. So being proactive, being aware that this is a problem, this has been a problem in the past, sitting her down and setting clear expectations, um, of what the visit would look like. And we're going to go into these places, but don't expect me to buy you all these things. And if it becomes a problem, set a clear consequence for noncompliance. So just kind of laying out the land for your youth is pre-teaching and teaching them before it becomes a problem so that they are aware of those expectations. And then obviously follow through with what you say. If you set the expectations and they push those boundaries and don't comply, and you said, hey, if you do this, you're grounded for a week, or I don't know, that's probably pretty harsh. You don't get to watch TV tonight, follow when you go home, follow through with what you say. So how to prevent and escape power struggles using iMessages. This is in your foster parent manual on page 36 as well. So you messages can escalate the conflict cycle. So examples would be like, can't you do anything right? Don't you dare use that language with me. You'd better start acting right. Things like that. So alternatively, iMessages instead of you messages can actually break the conflict cycle. First, iMessages are less likely to provoke further aggression, and they're just overall less threatening to others. So by reducing the defensiveness on the part of the child, iMessages can prepare them for feedback on their behavior. And it offers them a way out of the power struggle. Second, iMessages are effective at modeling honest communication, which is an important skill for youth to learn. And then thirdly, iMessages turn blame into personal responsibility for one's own feelings and can even include an appeal for help from the other person. Using I statements the way they are designed will help to keep a situation neutral and follow the proper structure. Following that proper structure will help you to effectively address the situation. So iMessages can feel unnatural, maybe even awkward at first. And like anything new, it can take a while to get used to, but it is an important practice. And we'll utilize these 4 basic parts. So it addresses emotion, situation, explanation, and resolution. So we want to use emotion. So we would start it with, I feel like, but we don't want to, we don't want to say, I feel like. So we want to say, I feel, and then state your emotion. So we don't want to say something like, I feel like, or I feel like you, or you make me feel, or it makes me feel. So we just want to start it with, I feel blank emotion, right? And then we want to bring up the situation. So I feel blank when, and this will be the problem behavior. This is where you would address that problem behavior. And then give the explanation. I feel blank when you blank, or when this happens, not you, sorry. I feel blank when this happens because, and then explain why the situation made you feel the way you feel. And then offer a resolution. It says it's optional. It's a good thing to do, but resolution, and this is what I would like to see happen instead, right? So I feel like that was very wordy, but I'll give you an example here. I feel annoyed when there are dirty clothes on the floor because I have to pick them up, and I would like everyone to use the hamper instead. So that is just a clear-cut I message. It's not using any you, or we're not placing any blame. We're just taking personal responsibility for how we feel and effectively communicating that. So here is an example, another one. So how could these messages be different? So you need to be quiet, stop arguing, and pay attention, or you'll make us late. Instead, maybe we try, I feel stressed when I'm talked over because it hurts our relationship, and I would like us to communicate better so that we could be on time. Sounds a lot nicer and a lot less aggressive. So as you can just, see the difference of these two sentences, it's a lot less combative. So on page 36 of your foster parent manual, try transforming these you messages into iMessages. I don't know if I'm going to turn to that page here. So at the bottom of page 36, this will also be something that you'll turn in as homework. But I want you to fill out try transforming these you messages into iMessages. Didn't I tell you to go to bed? How could you transform that into an I statement? And why can't you pick up after yourself? So we can discuss these as well when we meet. If you have any questions, or if it just doesn't make sense to you, we'll discuss that and maybe even work on some of them together. But if you can, in the meantime, before we meet, try to work on those and practice using your iMessages. All right, so teachable moments is another effective strategy to resolving and preventing power struggles. It's very important to be aware of teachable moments when choosing the time to talk to your youth about a particular problem. So there are good times and bad times to go about trying to solve problems with your youth, in other words. So in this diagram that you see here, you can see that teaching opportunities exist when the child is calm. So whether that's before the conflict or after. For example, you ask your youth to take out the trash, they ignore you, and they continue to watch TV. So you begin to nag them about taking out the trash, and they begin to whine and they argue. You continue to lecture, and at that point, the child throws a tantrum, you yell and begin to feel angry and hopeless, and then your child feels remorseful or ashamed, and then the situation is quickly shifted from an issue about taking out the trash to a forum of your relationship. So remember, we are trying to use discipline to teach, not to punish. So that is why we call these teachable moments, right? So if the moment is past when a constructive lesson could take place, don't try to recapture it, move on, and use a strategy to prevent the power struggle. There will be another chance later, or you can come back to it, after things have settled down. So where the stars are the opportune times to have these teachable moments, or to discipline when the child is calm. Because if we do that any other part in the hill here, it's just not going to be effective, and it could hurt the relationship. So just a few reminders about preventing. Be proactive. Remember that no matter how proactive you are, power struggles will occur because your buttons will get pushed. So using proactive strategies already discussed, ABCs, praise, using those effective instructions, parenting consistency, teachable moments, iMessages, and pre-teaching. And then use proactive strategies that we're going to discuss a little bit later, like behavior contracts, effective consequences, and then managing parental stress. So after the power struggle is over, using the teachable moment to repair and restore the relationship. So using the teachable moment to restore the relationship, we want to apologize, for letting your buttons get pushed, and or for even pushing their buttons. It's important to come back and apologize that it even got to that point. So then use an I statement to describe how you felt. Coach and encourage your child to also use the I statement to describe how they felt. And then we want to make a plan that includes how you'll respond next time during the power struggle, and then share it with that child. One proactive strategy to put in place to prevent further power struggles, like pre-teaching, and then or using an effective behavior contract, which will be described later in a later session. Using the teachable moment to address the initial youth behavioral issue. So we want to remind youth of initial behavioral issue, which is that antecedent. We want to remind the youth of that antecedent. We want to engage the youth in a simple problem-solving sequence to process. What behaviors did you exhibit in the beginning, and what could you have done differently? We want to just have a simple conversation with them about that. So state what the logical or natural consequence will be for the child's initial behavior, and then follow through with that natural or logical consequence. And re-energize yourself and your child. This is so important. Recharge yourself. Do whatever calms or refreshes you. Getting into an argument, especially with your kiddos, is very hard. And it drains you emotionally. So do something that does recharge yourself, that calms you. Allow your child to recharge themselves as well. Do whatever it is that calms or refreshes them, within means, as long as it's healthy and appropriate. And then emotionally let it go. The situation is over, it's resolved, and it doesn't need to be rehashed. Live and let go, right? So fully forgive yourself and the child. Understand that you aren't the only ones that go through this. This is the entire reason that this is an entire session in a training, because it is so easy and so common to get in power struggles with your kiddos. And if we don't recognize how to get out of those or how to mend those, then we're just further doing damage to our relationship. So fully forgive yourself and the child, because it's kind of a normal thing, but also does need to be addressed. So, and then don't bring up the power struggle in future situations either. You let it go. So as we work on stabilizing situation and removing ourselves from power struggles, we are improving the likelihood for youth to feel safe and in control. We do this through the setting of the limits, and then allowing for self-expression. And we ultimately increase the potential for collaboration and mutuality once the emotional energy has dissipated. So there can be good that comes from the other side of a power struggle. So if we were in person, this would be a lot easier, but we're not going to do that. So let's see. You will have some opportunity to practice writing down like a power struggle using the ABC method here. So over the next week or so, just kind of be on the lookout for maybe any conflicts or power struggles that you encounter. And that could be with literally anyone. So if you do have a child in the home, be on the lookout for that. If you get your buttons pressed or if you get into some sort of conflict, if you, with a friend or a significant other. And then I want you to just write this down. So it's on page 38 in your foster parent manual. And so if you do encounter a power struggle between now and the end of our training, I want you to write this down. I want you to write the antecedent down. What was it that, what was the thing that started the struggle? What was the button? What did that other person do that pushed your button? What was that button? And then the behavior, what did your response look like? And then the consequence, what feelings and behaviors did the other person exhibit as a result of, your behaviors? It's more of just kind of a self-reflection on what a power struggle looks like. So, believe that's it. So if you have any questions, I know that this was a lot of information, but we will meet together again and we will kind of dissect this a little bit further. So make sure to write your questions down, and come prepared to discuss and talk about maybe some power struggles that you've been in, or whatever that looks like. So thank you so much for hanging out with me on this session, and I look forward to talking with you guys in person later on. So I hope you guys have a good one. I don't know what this is.